Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and welcome to the IniBuilds Airbus A350. In today's video, we're going to be going over the A350 and answering one important question. Is it worth your $80? Yes, this plane is $80. It's more than the actual base game itself. So we're going to go through the interior, exterior. We're going to do a quick little walk around the outside. We'll go inside and take a look around. We'll get it up in the air, land it, and give overall thoughts and impressions on this plane and decide for you if this is worth that amount of money. So without further ado, let's get started. So today's livery, we have the Olympic livery for Delta Airlines. You can purchase different liveries from the marketplace. So here we are at Metro Airport. We're going to take a quick look around. So the exterior is very nicely designed. As we get closer to the aircraft, you kind of see, how well liveries are made. You get up close to the landing gear here, you can see like the tires. Tires look great. The texturing on this main landing gear is fantastic. Leave it up in here, it's all nicely detailed. Spin back around. I have the engine cowl opened up. Now this is something you can do with the aircraft. You can actually go in and there's like a maintenance thing. I'll get to that later. But just looking over here, you can see just how nicely detailed everything is. Just walk around to the front of the fan blade here. Looks amazing. You can even get someone over here looking. Which is pretty cool to see. Probably trying to figure out why these Trent XWBs are so good. Nice details all throughout, even in the back here. Back of the engine, the pylon, everything looks great. We walk towards the back, you can see just how well designed this specific texture is. Now obviously the paint and everything will vary depending on the livery you get. Like I have the Delta pack. If I got the Lufthansa pack, it'd look a little different. But overall, the textures look really, really good. Even if I get up close here. The lettering and everything like that, all the writing that shows you how to work the cargo door. Check out the right landing gear. Again, you can see, you can even see the treading in the tires and kind of how they work against the ground. You look at the brakes, see the brakes and the running gear, nicely detailed. You can phase through it like that. Kind of funny. But even just up in here, look at how nice that is. There's one of the engines with the cowl is closed, like you would see it every day. Yeah, nice texture. So overall, the outside looks fantastic. It's very well detailed. The wings do move. Especially when you're up in the air, you'll actually see the wings will flex. Which is a nice touch. Some aircraft, some of the lower end aircraft do not feature that. This plane feels very alive, like the real thing. Which is fantastic for something that would cost $80. So now that we've checked out the outside, let's go ahead and take a look at the inside. here we are inside the A350. So if you've seen my other video involving the A380, you'll notice that this kind of looks the same. It's because it pretty much is. This is the newer cockpit setup of these the newer Airbus models. Let me just take a quick look around. We got nice large screens there. ICAS, MFD, PFD. And over here you have your, it's called the OIS. This controls everything for your simulation. We'll go over that in just a second. When we take a look up here at the overhead panel, most of these buttons do work. Obviously all your push pins back here do not. But everything here you can pretty much mess with. You can test your fire. Makes a noise too. All this stuff here does work. Wipers. Up there's your ADIRs. Everything that you need to properly work the aircraft. We come back down here to the center console where your throttles are, flaps and spoilers. You can see everything is laid out very similar to the A380. One thing about this aircraft, compared to, again, the A380, this is because it has a similar layout, is the A380, you can, when you're typing in anything over here on your FMS, you can actually use your real keyboard, so you don't have to manually click everything here. However, this aircraft does not have that functionality, so you have to use everything down here or the keyboard, which we pull this out. Click it one more time. There's your keyboard. Now I did try having this out and having the keyboard function enabled to see if I could use my actual keyboard. Unfortunately, it does not work. Let's go ahead. Whoops. Let's go ahead and stow this. Just like that. Over here, here's your tiller. Flight controls, autopilot. This is all your stuff for some lighting. Over here, got a printer for your flight plan. Get that out of the way. Parking brake. Everything you need to work the aircraft down here. Transponder, radios. This is for your cockpit door if you want to lock, unlock, rudder trim. Engine start, the master levers, and the start selector. And everything for your flight. You can see what your flight controls are, hydraulics, that all will pop up right here. So let's get into the OIS. What is this? Well, what this is this basically controls everything that the aircraft does. So we're gonna start from the top here. So this is the main menu. This has everything you will need. This does have integration with SimBrief. And this aircraft is supposed to use it the most. IniBuilds does say that you can use the standard electronic flight bag and it'll work. However, I am yet to find the way to do so. I thought I did using this, but apparently that's not the case. So over here, everything here needs to have Navigraph SimBrief all across here. The load sheet, which is right here, this will show what your passengers are, fuel, all that stuff. Now you can import from SimBrief if you have a flight plan set up for this aircraft. If you do it manually, you'll have to enter in your zero fuel weight. The empty fuel weight is 140,000 kilograms. Anything more than that, then you'll start seeing things like passengers and such and cargo be added to the aircraft. Fuel load. Now, unfortunately, you cannot get 100% fuel. You can only get 87% fuel. Not sure why this is. Maybe it's something just to make sure you don't completely go way over max takeoff weight. And then when you do set your fuel, You can choose realistic fueling, which takes quite a while because this is a big aircraft, or you can select instant. Let's go over to ground real quick. So this shows everything that is going on with the ground. You can open up all your doors, check the slides. If you have an emergency, you can arm your slides. Lights in the avionics cargo bays. You can see what stairs you want. This is for your pushback. This works for GSX and the default ground system. You can choose if you want to have your GPU enabled, which I do. I don't even have the APU on right now. Chocks, you can choose to remove or add those. I have those on currently. If you're parked at a terminal, you can toggle your jetway. You can request the ramp truck. You can move the luggage and catering, and then when you click these two, their respective doors will open. If you fancy winter flying and you want to do some de-icing or simulate de-icing, you can select cold weather accumulation, how little or how much you want. Going over here to the OPF, again, this is all for SimBrief. Right here is your takeoff performance. So here, you'll take your departure airport. So we are at Detroit Metro Airport here. We would use runway 22 left. And then you will sync the conditions, which will give you everything here. And you can select what you want the weights to be. So your takeoff weight is 220 tons. You can make it kilograms. The altimeter if you wanted an HPA or the other one. Distance, metric or imperial, your choice. Then when you click sync and then you click compute, what it'll do is it'll give you your V1, VR, V2, your V speeds, what flap configuration you want, trim, what your flex and toga would be. And then when you have that calculated, you just click send to FMS and it'll automatically run it over there. Landing performance, it's the same way. You type in where you're going, what runway you're going to be using, click sync, and then click compute, and it'll kind of give you what your stop margins and everything will be. Terminal chart, again, if this is all for, you can use SimBrief, or if you could type in everything you need. So here, this is all your charts that you would find on on the normal EFB there. This can all be pulled up right here so you know where you're going if you're unfamiliar with your airport. And then en route, it's just a map. Kind of shows you where you're at, so you can see where the aircraft is relative to everything else in the vicinity. So going through here, we've already gone through everything with the ground. The maintenance panel is pretty cool. So as I said, I had the left engine so we can show you what the exterior looks like. So you can go ahead and close that. So you can go through all these options. You can just deploy the ram air turbine. You can see battery life for all your batteries here, hydraulic life, how much oil is left in the engines, APU, how many times it's been started, what your tires are looking like, and your brakes. So you can see everything's in the green, everything is pretty healthy. I did fly the aircraft a little bit before previously, so you can see there's been a little bit of oil and hydraulic usage, and you can go through and service all of these accordingly. That's something that a lot of these aircraft, especially base aircraft and some of the paid aircraft, do not have. Another thing you can have is situations. So what this does is this will simulate if anything goes wrong in the aircraft during your flight. So I have these disabled, but you can enable them if you would like. You can simulate bird strike. What happens if a bird hits one of the engines and shuts down one of your engines? Depressurization, medical emergency. Passengers acting like they're on Spirit Airlines, rest in peace. There's smoke, dual engine failure, so you can turn this big, giant aircraft into a glider. You can also go through and you can set just small little faults and work around ways to get everything back to where it's supposed to be, or if you need to do emergency declare and land at the nearest airport that'll allow for such a big aircraft. You can even have engine fires, you can test all that. It's pretty neat how all of this works. Back here, there's an autosave feature, which is really cool. This saves the status of the aircraft every 10 minutes, just in case something goes wrong and you need to pause or whatever. It'll resume everything as you left it. Panel states, so you can select how you want the aircraft to be. So if you don't want to go through the hassle of actually like running through the before start setup, you don't have to. You can just click ready for takeoff and it'll fire everything up for you on its own. Down here we have the options. Now this will just control basic things. So again, aircraft weathering, the IRS, the line, how fast, if you want it fast, instant, all this stuff is just controls realism and simulations. So you can see default panel state. If you want it just ready for takeoff, load it up, you're good. Or on the APU, or however you want it. In here, you can select how you want everything to be. Equipment, so this is all managed by your livery. So this is, again, Delta. It might be a little different for all this stuff depending on if you're running like a Lufthansa or Istanbul or Japan Airlines or whoever. The printer, you can choose to have the printer active. Again, more external stuff controlled by that. You can turn on and off the rear-world GPS jamming. Now, if you've ever flown in the Middle East area, on the other side of the world, then this is actually a real problem. So you can simulate that as well. You could do your throttle calibrations. So depending on what type of flight stick, joystick you have, you can choose how you want everything to be set. So you can see moving the flight controls. So there's 100%. So there's 0. So it says 0 there. But if we actually look, we're in full reverse thrust. So now we're not. So that's why you see it looks like that a little bit. So you can go through here. Sound cabin options is we can kind of control how you want everything to look, how you want everything to sound. Call outs, so this is for your ground proximity warning system. You can customize which ones you want, or if you don't want them at all. Volume control, this controls the overall volume of everything that's going on in the simulation. If there's any third-party things, so if you're streaming, obviously you can have a streamer modes, all your sim brief stuff, and then more simulation things here. So now that we have gone over everything in the OIS, let's go ahead and let's take a look in the cabin. Now, when you download this aircraft, there are 3 different versions available. There's the 2 versions of the A350-900. One has a cabin, one does not have a cabin, and you have the A350-1000. So, walking through the cabin, which I do have, you can see everything is all nicely detailed. I'm not even to the actual cabin itself. This is where the flight attendants would sit. This is like your forward galley here. Everything looks nice, highly detailed, and then time for the cabin. So this is your first class. This would be since we're on Delta, this would be the Delta 1 suites, which look really nice, very nicely detailed. They have built-in entertainment. Unfortunately, the screens do not work. Some aircraft do have that, to where they do work. You can actually click on it and do cool things with it. You can see outside the aircraft, there's no blocking of visibility. Unfortunately, the overhead stow bins do not work. So here's the next galley. You can see everything here. Let's open that up. Unfortunately, none of this stuff does open, sadly. Some things do. Let's kind of face through the cabin. Some small things do, some small things don't. There'll be things that might look like they open, but then in reality they don't. So this would be like your business class here. Again, nice and neatly laid out. Nice textures and quality. And then back here is economy. It's a 3 to 3 to 3 configuration. Again, none of the overheads work. Let's go ahead and open these up here. And even if you come over here, fortunately you cannot access the bathrooms. Some of these you can, but they are there. They do exist. Okay, look at that. That's it. Just unfortunately cannot access them. More economy. Obviously this runs towards the back of the aircraft right there. Yeah, overall, everything is nicely detailed. However, there are a few things that you cannot interact with. Like I said, the bathroom stalls, like all this stuff for your what would be your catering, and like this is like the aft galley here where you have all your food supplies and things like that. Unfortunately, these things you cannot interact with. But overall, the textures look really nice. So let's go ahead and teleport back to the cockpit. Now, apart with these all aircraft, there are custom views. Obviously, this is our default. Now, if you go through and you press the respective button, you can kind of go through and mess with everything as according. Now, I believe there's only 5 cockpit views, and then after that, you kind of get what would be your first class. Kind of looking out the window view. That's shift 6, and then 7's the other side. Then you got over the wing, which is 8. Shift 9's the other wing. Shift 0 is a custom view that I have, so you can see it goes right over there. All right, so that'll do it with the interior walk around and everything like that. So now, let's go ahead. I'm going to get this aircraft fired up over to the runway. Let's get it up in the air. Alrighty, now that we're all lined up on 2 to the left, let's disable the park brake. Landing lights and everything are ready to go. Let's get this big bird up in the air. Real quick. These Rolls-Royce Trents are very powerful, but I'm also running pretty light today.
V1.
Let's rotate. Very, very responsive. Positive rate, gears going up. Set for auto. I have auto throttle set. So I put in a quick flight, programmed a quick flight into the computer over to Selfridge Air National Guard base. Yes, it's military base, but at the end of the day, this is a simulator. Plus, it's the only runway here long enough to be able to support an aircraft like this. So we will test just the responsiveness of the aircraft. We'll also put it on the autopilot, hence why I put the flight in play. So right now I am hand flying it. Despite this aircraft being as large as it is, it feels very light, very nimble. I'm barely messing with the controls, not really wrestling it. Buttery smooth. Take a look at the outside of the aircraft. Sound pack is pretty good. I do like the sounds. Perfect. We'll shake the wings a little bit. Like I said, it's relatively responsive for the most part. Obviously, with it being a big aircraft, there's a little bit very small delay for rocking the wings like that, or pitching up, pitching down. Very, very small delay when it comes to that. Just climb up a little bit more. This aircraft feels really good to fly. Very, very good to fly. Disable the auto throttle here. Manually fly it here. We'll put it in the autopilot real quick. Auto throttle back on. Just gonna want to climb, so we're gonna set a different altitude here. I'm gonna set 4,000. The aircraft responds to everything very, very well, which is very good. So while we let it fly on autopilot, head to the outside and take a good look around. Again, everything is nicely detailed. You can see the wings are actually moved up a little bit because of the lift it is producing. Now, if it was a turbulent day, which thankfully it really isn't, the wings would flex depending on how much turbulence you have. We go over to a wing view here. Even the sound of the engines change. The sound pack changes depending on where you are in the cabin. You see the town down there. Great city of Detroit, Motor City. Here, let's see. So I think I am. Yep. You can do some sightseeing here. 696 going this way, I-75 that way. Lots of automotive factories in this area. here is the city of Troy. A lot more industrial, but that's also very upscale, very nice, very pretty. Over there is the BNC Tower, you can kind of see it. Looking at this cabin view, you can see how the sun reflects off the winglet there. The way the textures are pretty much dynamic. The computer is setting us up for the ILS. So Selfridge, which is our local International Guard base, should be right here. This should be Van Dyke. Yep, there's right in here is where they build the Ram trucks. That building right there. This is where Ford makes their transmissions. It's nice seeing the place where you're local to up in the air. Yeah, it's in the simulator, so it's not exactly one-to-one, but it just kind of gives you an idea. This mall is no longer with us. Alright. So the plane should line us up all the way to get set for the ILS. So what I'm going to do, we're getting close, we're 12 miles out. I'm going to set a managed speed here. Go to 10. Selected speed. Now the altimeter should change. Let's refresh that just to make sure. So altimeter is 2955. Get a little slower, so we're 2300 up. We're going to go into increments of 100. We're going to go flaps 1. See here what the computer has done. Told the autopilot it's got to come around here and hit these 3 points. We don't really need to do that. I can disable it right now, which is actually what I'm going to do. So now I have control of the aircraft. We're going to begin turning now. We're going to do a sharp banking here. Just because the aircraft can in fact handle it, we're going to slow to 190. Runway 19 should be coming into sight here very soon here. There it is. Alright, now that we got the airfield in sight, let's go ahead and get ourselves lined up here. we're going to use 140 as our main speed. We're going to go ahead and drop the gear. Then we're going to start slowly adding flaps. It's a little bit windy today. We have a pretty high gusts, 26 knots. Flying right over downtown Mount Clemens. Even on a slow approach like this, because I don't have too much weight in there, I can kind of land a little at a much slower airspeed, which is nice. Let's just go ahead and make sure our ground spoilers are armed, which they are. So the auto throttle will control try to do its best to control my airspeed as I approach, and then once I get closer to the airfield, I will take control of the throttles. It's playing tricks on me right now. Unfortunately, no pappies, so I kind of have to judge based on where the landing zone is.
$500. 400. Speed. 300.
Sink rate.
Speed. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20, retard, 10, 5, retard.
Reverse. Got 60 knots coming off of reverse. Plane handles itself very well. You know, we did a little bit of autopiloting. We did a little bit of hand flying. The plane does brilliantly. It handles well, despite its size. It's pretty nimble. Like I said, there's only a little bit of delay when you're like rocking the wings and everything like that. But you're never really gonna do that, to be honest. Let's be real here. Autopilot does exactly as it should, same with the auto throttle and navigation. Everything is all the way it's supposed to be. Now, with all of this being said from start to finish, is it worth the $80 to pick this aircraft up? I'm going to say no, simply because there are other aircraft out there that can do the same job at a much lower point of entry. Now, if you really, really like the Airbus aircraft and you want to do long hauls, the standard A330 that comes with the game is fine. It's a little bit more easier to set up. I've already done a full video on how to get the aircraft set up for flight. This is a little bit more into it within over here in the FMS. You got to manually enter everything. Yes, the range is a little bit more than the A330, but that's about it. They both handle themselves very well. And there's just, you know, other aircraft that you could fly that are a little more intuitive. Example, the PMDG series of aircraft, 737, 777, the 777. They're a little bit less, they're only a few bucks less than the A350, but there's a lot more going on. If you're looking for the full experience, then yes, you could probably try to justify, yeah, spending $80 is worth it. But then at the end of the day, you know, $80 can get you a lot of stuff. You can get a lot of different aircraft for the same price. Now I know that these aircraft are made by other, you know, small studios, so they kind of have to have the price up in order for them to, you know, survive and make the money at the end of the day. But doing this, you know, there was people making A350s, 777s, things like that, freeware, you know, many years ago. Look at the fly-by-wire A380, for example. That's a completely free aircraft, and it has the same level of detail as this $80 A350. And there's a couple things that I did a review on the A380. There's a couple things that I wish could be fixed, but overall, for a freeware aircraft, it's the best there is. Now, I spent the $80 just because I thoroughly enjoy the A350. I've always been a big fan of this aircraft since it came out. What it can do, what it's brought to the table in terms of aviation. It is by far one of the best, in my opinion, out there in the real world for long-haul flying. So that'll do it for today's video. Hopefully you found some of this information somewhat useful and maybe help you decide if you do or do not want the IniBuilds A350. Again, it's $80. You can catch it on sale here and there. I got a couple aircraft, DLC aircraft that were on sale. This was one of them. This was like $10 off, so it was okay. But make sure to leave a like, comment down below what you would like to see next. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to get notified from when I do post other videos. This is probably my longest video to date. Hopefully, this will keep you entertained. Again, I hope you found the information very useful. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.